Yo, guys, Urban Bars brings you the best UK reactions to rap, hip hop, and urban music from all around the world. And guys, we got a hot one coming up for you. And guys, I think this is our man Thomas Sowell. But if I've got it wrong, then it's my bad. But guys, our man Thomas Sowell is talking about the problem with fancy diplomas. And guys, straight off the bat, here in the UK, there was a time when only a proportion of students went from higher education to further education to degrees. But now it seems to be a prerequisite for every single company to ask for someone to have a degree, no matter what job you do, no matter how entry level the job is, they want a degree. So, one point when a degree actually meant something because, it distinguished you from the rest. But now you're just one in a million. So literally, these fancy diplomas, these fancy degrees, maybe they don't mean as much as they used to. That's just my opinion, guys. That's just my opinion. Because now, if everyone has a degree, what separates the wheat from the chaff? If you excuse my terminology. Because now people are saying, well, hang on, you've got a degree, but you've got no work experience. You see what I'm saying? And wasn't it our man Kanye West when he did college dropout and all that sort of stuff? I'm certain it was our man Kanye when he was saying, can a degree keep you warm? Can a degree keep you in? All this sort of nonsense, blah, blah, blah. I remember he was doing all that sort of stuff many, many years ago, and a lot of it did ring true. Anyway, guys, enough of me talking. Let's hear our man Thomas Sowell, and let's hear him talking about the problem with a fancy diploma.
Writing in 1981, historian Arthur Schlesinger Jr., who attended Phillips Exeter and Harvard and held positions as a professor at Harvard and later at the City University of New York. Arthur Schlesinger Jr., quote,
Hold on. Those in the US who think the Soviet Union is on the verge of economic and social collapse are kidding themselves. Economic and social collapse. Sorry.
those in the U.S. who think the Soviet Union is on the verge of economic and social collapse are only kidding themselves, close quote. Quotation number 2. Speaking in 1982, only months after Arthur Schlesinger Jr., Ronald Reagan, a graduate of Eureka College.
In an ironic sense, Karl Marx was right. We are witnessing today a great revolutionary crisis, a crisis where the demands of the economic order are conflicting directly with those of the political order. But the crisis is happening not in the free, non-Marxist West, but in the home of Marxist-Leninism, the Soviet Union. It is the Soviet Union that runs against the tide of history by denying human freedom and human dignity to its citizens. It also is in deep economic difficulty.
Tom, the professional, exquisitely educated intellectual Arthur Schlesinger Jr. got it wrong. And Ronald Reagan, the graduate of a little school in the middle of the country, Eureka College, got it right. A decade after these two quotations, the Soviet Union went out of existence. How come?
Well, Arthur Schlesinger is part of a long and one might say distinguished line of people who have been absolutely wrong for decades and actually for centuries. So this is just one of many statements that you could quote. It's not even the only time that Arthur Schlesinger Jr. was wrong by miles. He was wrong in attributing the recovery from the Great Depression to Franklin D. Roosevelt.
And guys, for all those who don't know, this is Thomas Sowell. So I've covered him on 2 or 3 occasions. I rank him akin our man JBP, Jordan B. Peterson, and there's a few other people like our man Thomas Sowell who speak a lot of sense, whether it's politically, socially, economically, or historically as well. So guys, let's check him out.
He was wrong in arguing that the tax cuts were going to make it, under Andrew Mellon, we're going to make it harder to balance the budget. They not only balanced the budgets, they had a surplus and paid down the national debt.
And even after John Kennedy's tax cuts, Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon
Well, no, Andrew Mellon was earlier. But in writing retrospectively about it, he said that Mellon was very inconsistent in saying he wanted to reduce the national debt while cutting the tax rate.
Right.
And I talk a lot about the national debt. If you check out the national debt clock or the world debt clock, you check all the various different categories. You check out where your money's supposedly really.
He cut the tax rate, but the tax revenues increased.
So Arthur Schlesinger was wrong about the tax cuts of the 20s.
Yes.
And then when he served in the Kennedy White House, he resisted those tax cuts, which also worked. Mm-hmm. And then he opposed Ronald Reagan's. He was wrong 3 times. So what is the pathology of intellectuals that, one condensation, an unfair, crude condensation, but it sort of gets at a point of this book might.
Bit of product placement there. Intellectuals in society by our man, Thomas Sowell.
He's simply, the fancier your education, the more likely you are to be wrong.
Well, the more like.
Oh, I like that. The fancier your education, the more likelihood that you will be wrong. And is that because it's all about theory, but not actually going into practice? Like before I said, yeah, they've all got a university education, a college degree or university degree, but they don't have the work experience. They don't have the actual practice in the theater of where they need to be in. You've got all the, theoretical, in theory, this is what should happen, but in practice. So maybe you need the theory and the practical. I don't know. Let me know here in the comment section, guys. It's all gravy. It's all gravy.
I would say there's something to that, because the more likely you are to spout off about things you don't know anything about. The problem is that all of us have a narrow range within which we may be great, but a few steps outside that range, and we're totally lost.
So he's talking about being outside your comfort zone, staying in your lane. And that is so true, guys. Sometimes it's good to stay in your lane because you could be very, very knowledgeable about a very small, minute, specific area. But when you get away and then you look into the minutiae of stuff, maybe you don't know as much as you thought you did. But hey, I'm just surmising. Really?
Bobby Fischer didn't go around
the chess grandmaster.
On theories of evolution and stuff like that. He was happy to play chess.
Chess is a great game. People.
Intellectuals, someone who's a linguist like Noam Chomsky, he didn't stick to linguistics. If he stuck to linguistics, most people would never have heard of him.
So somehow or other, a fancy education seems to give people the feeling that they have been given the diploma, gives them permission to spout off about world affairs, politics, economics, when all they know is linguistics. Or Arthur Schlesinger Jr.'s case, he knows a lot about the administration of Andrew Jackson 150 years before. Why? What is it about him?
So, guys, that's true. And I'm probably part of this problem as well, because I talk about a lot of stuff as well. I'm not saying I'm an expert at stuff I just speak about stuff which I have a little bit of insight into. I try not to say that, I'm a knowledgeable font on it, although I do talk a lot about, say, boxing and wrestling, things like that. But that's just from a perspective of being involved in it, and the music as well, being involved in it for so much of my life. But I'm not saying that it's the be all and end all anything. So I get this point 100%. Sometimes we are ferociously protective of what we think is right and what we think should happen, but where we maybe need to open the door a bit and, maybe to let some more light in and let some light onto the shade, so that we can sort of discuss what we're talking about and let new ideas come through and debate, and then come to some kind of an understanding. Maybe, I don't know. But I do understand what he's saying. I'm just going to wheel that a little bit, guys, just to go back and check out our man.
Somehow or other, a fancy education seems to give people the feeling that they have been given the diploma, gives them permission to spout off about world affairs, politics, economics, when all they know is linguistics. Or Arthur Schlesinger Jr.'s case, he knows a lot about the administration of Andrew Jackson 150 years before. Why? What is it about having a fancy diploma that gives people the right to waffle on?
It's not only the diploma, it's all just the general reputation of being an intellectual. And you don't have to go that far away. I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a mountain lion killed here in Palo Alto. And all kinds of insane things were said by people at Stanford and whatnot about how terrible it was to kill this mountain lion. He was up in a tree near where the school was
about to let out.
School was about to let out.
I remember that. The cops had been watching it all day. It was in a tree in a neighborhood, and when the school was about to let out, they thought we have no choice.
People who may have been, they may have been the world's authorities on existentialism or Mayan culture or whatever. They know nothing about mountain lions, and the cops have had to deal with this before. And they do know something about mountain lions.
Oh, that was good, guys. That was good. I didn't know what to expect from that. So we're talking about the problems of a fancy education. So that's so true. So I was coming at this from the angle of, if everyone has this fancy education, then in some ways there'll be, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, because, what people say is that there are too many, can I say it? Too many chiefs and not enough, let's say troops. There are too many chiefs and not enough troops. So literally what I'm saying is going to happen is we'll be top heavy with all these so-called educated people, but who's going to do all the jobs that potentially don't need the fancy education? That was the angle I was coming from. But the angle that Thomas Sowell was coming from was all these people with a fancy education, they don't really know what's going on sort of down here on planet Earth. They have all these high concepts, all these high convoluted ideas and opinions, but when it comes into practice, they have no idea. So it's almost like he said the analogy of like the mountain animal. Was it the mountain lion or something? I think he was saying was sitting outside the school where they're educating the children at. They have no idea what to do. It's time to go home for the kids, but what do we do? But there you have the local police who have the not the education, but they have the knowledge and the experience. And that's what I was saying before. When businesses are saying, okay, fair enough, you guys have got all these fancy ABCs after your name, but what experience do you do or do you have in working in this role? You have absolutely no experience, no concept of how to start. All we know about fancy education is that you can do something that from A to B. So we know that you could study for a 2-year period. You know that you can work towards a certain singular goal, or to speak out on facts in a rote fashion, etc., or maybe be able to dissect something a little bit. But when it comes to the real world and the real world machinations, you probably have no clue. And that's what we're talking about, guys. That's what we're talking about. So that was interesting. That's our man Thomas Sowell. And he says, the fancier the education, the more possibility you'll get wrong, because you're opening up yourself to a lot of areas and avenues that are not within your own lane. Guys, I love that. Here at Urb'n Barz, you know that we love the music. We know that we love the music. Old school, new school, cool school, true school, all sorts of schools, guys. We love the music. But sometimes we love just to widen our horizons, guys, and listen to some people who are talking a lot of sense. I hope you liked it, guys. I hope if you did, that you've subscribed to my channel here at Urb'n Barz, that you're prepared to check out the next and the next and the next reaction. But guys, look after yourselves. Look after each other. Take care of yourselves. Have a good time. Go out into the wide world. Breathe that fresh air, guys. But make certain you come back to the next Urb'n Barz reaction.